Have you ever felt that you are losing interest in almost everything around you? I'm not talking about a nervous breakdown. I'm not talking about unbearable pain or deep despair. I'm talking about this strange feeling when things that once were so important to you suddenly stop moving you. Your work, your goals, your relationships, and even those dreams you chased with such determination. Everything begins to lose its color. And in the midst of this silence, you ask yourself the question, what is actually fading? Have you run out of motivation? Or is some version of you quietly withdrawing? The society we live in has a bad habit of quickly sticking labels to such states. They will tell you that you are going through a crisis, that you have lost your direction, or that it is a sign that something in you has broken and needs to be fixed immediately. But what no one tells you is that Carl Jung, one of the deepest psychologists in history, saw it exactly the opposite. For him, it was the moment when people most often deceive themselves. When you start losing interest in everything, you don't fall apart. In fact, it's a signal that your mental energy simply no longer wants to invest in your old way of life. In this film, I won't give you empty advice so that you wake up tomorrow and be productive for no reason. We will talk about why this disconnection occurs, what your inner world demands from you with all its might, and why this is not the end of anything, but a quiet beginning of a huge transformation. If you are going through this, I don't want to push you to go faster. I want you to understand why you are stopping. There are stages in life that from the outside do not look like a crisis at all. You are not losing control, you are not crying on the floor, and everything around you functions with a normal routine, which can even be a little frightening. You still go to work, you still smile when necessary, and you fulfill your duties just like always. But there is something you feel is strange, something that is very hard to explain to others. You just don't feel any impulse towards any of those things anymore. Interest does not disappear overnight, slamming the doors, but it withdraws so slowly that you begin to doubt what you feel. And yet it is clear enough for you not to be able to ignore it anymore. What makes this state so uncomfortable is the fact that there is no easy name for it. You can't say that you are sad, because sadness usually has a clear reason. You are not completely empty either, because you still feel, you still think, and you still exist. You only feel that you live a very small part of yourself, while the rest has taken a step back and watches the scene in silence. And since there is no obvious problem to blame, your mind is in a panic. It wants a reason, a diagnosis, something that justifies why you feel this way. But what you are experiencing does not follow the logic that you know. Imagine someone who has dedicated years to building a career or to the pursuit of some idealistic goal, giving it all of yourself. And suddenly, at the moment when everything seems stable and safe, begins to feel a huge distance from his own life. He is still good at what he does, but the sense of belonging to this place simply evaporated. There is no hatred or resentment. It's just a gradual cooling down. Everyone would say that this person needs a vacation or that it got stuck in a routine, but from a different perspective, what is happening is something completely different. The entire mental structure has completed its task. Your mind is not a rigid block. It is a living process. Your energy is always seeking a direction in which it can move. When a certain way of life or a certain image of yourself that you had no longer fits you, that energy simply stops fueling it. And then the first feeling that arises is not pain, but rather a loss of interest. Something stops consuming you. It stops seeming essential. To better understand this, imagine a lighting system in a theater. When the act ends, the main lights on stage go out. Someone in the audience might think that everything is over and that the place has been abandoned. But behind the curtain, in the darkness, the activity does not cease at all. The decorations are being taken down and the space is being prepared for a completely new act. Tracking interest is just like turning off those lights. It means that one performance has come to an end. That you have reached this place already distinguishes you from the majority. A huge part of people lacks the mental strength to endure this emptiness without escaping into distraction. That's why I want you to leave your mark and make the inner decision visible, which almost no one dares to do. When I feel that I am losing everything, it is important now that you understand that you are not falling apart. The fact that you can notice this change is proof that your awareness is functioning perfectly. Many people make the mistake of trying to cover up this emptiness with noise, seeking new goals, or forcing themselves to return to normalcy at all costs. But forcing yourself to act like before only makes the conflict consume you from the inside. Not every void needs to be filled quickly. Some must remain untouched so that something new can be born. If you are in this place, the most urgent thing is not action, but listening. It's about allowing oneself to dwell in this disconnection without fleeing to fix it. For it is precisely behind this desperate pursuit of fixing oneself at all costs that a silent trap lies, into which almost everyone falls, unaware of it. This trap is not hidden in your head. It waits outside. This is the invisible wall that you encounter as soon as you realize that you are losing interest. I am talking about the way the whole world interprets your condition. And if you do not notice this clash between what you feel and what society demands, it is very likely that you will turn your back on the most important signal in your entire life. We live in a system that loves constant movement. They are always pushing you towards it so that you would want more. There was more, and it moved forward without stopping. Interest in things is considered the ultimate proof that you are healthy and useful. When this interest fades away, the conclusion that everyone around you comes to is automatic. Something is wrong with you. No one stops to think, is this problem really a problem? Long before psychology existed, stories and myths described this phase with incredible precision. In the oldest legends of humanity, there is always a moment when the hero must completely isolate themselves from the known world, spends days in darkness, producing nothing, suspended between life and death, not acting like the hero he is supposed to be. From the perspective of every observer, it is being destroyed at this moment. But myths understand something that we forgot. It is precisely in this state of paralysis, stripped of its superficial power, the hero receives the deepest wisdom. Before it reaches its true strength, it must go through complete disconnection. Ancient cultures did not perceive this pause as a failure. They regarded it as an absolutely necessary bridge. But if someone were to try to endure this pause today, society would rush to pull them out of it. They would tell him that he has a disorder, that he needs urgent help, and they would demand a return to normalcy. This is the modern world, and your deepest nature is completely diverging. Society has no patience for internal processes. The biggest misunderstanding regarding loss of interest is that the world treats it as a mistake, which must be forcibly repaired, while Jung saw in it a voice that deserves all attention. Not every uncomfortable state is a disease. Some are necessary for you to mature. When you stay too long in a form that is already too tight for you, lack of interest does not appear to destroy your life. It appears so that you do not remain trapped in a structure that no longer makes any sense. But the environment is not designed to understand these nuances. She only sees that you have stopped being productive and is terrified. There is a certain idea in psychological philosophy that is harsh but absolutely true. Very often we suffer in our souls, trying to avoid rightful suffering. Stop for a moment and think about it. Most people do not allow themselves to go through the natural pain associated with change. They do not allow themselves to get lost, to doubt, to let go of old certainties. And because they deny themselves the feeling of this necessary discomfort, the mind conveys this refusal to them in the form of physical or emotional symptoms. Chronic anxiety, insomnia, a constant knot in the chest. The tragedy is that the world only reacts then when these symptoms appear, but completely ignores the original signal. In this scenario, lack of interest is treated as enemy number one. Everyone is rushing to find out how to regain motivation, how to get inspired again, how to resurrect that old version of themselves. But the question you should ask yourself is completely different. What if that old version of you has already completed its task? What happens if trying to go back to being who you were is just a cowardly way of postponing the change that is already inevitable? Imagine that you have a fever. Fever is not a disease. It is your body's response fighting something to heal you. But if you obsessively focus on lowering the temperature at all costs and forget to look for what caused the fever, you are weakening your body even more. Losing interest works exactly the same way. It is the response of your mind to a deep contradiction, but they persuade you to treat it like a virus that you must eliminate. And through this way of looking at things, thousands of people remain stuck in place for years. This world fears emptiness. The void does not yield immediate results. It cannot be boasted about. There are no measurable indicators, and it does not generate money. And yet it is precisely in this great silence that the most crucial movements of your existence are taking place. When nothing attracts you anymore, it is very likely that this is exactly the moment when you no longer want to live on the surface. And the world of the surface always looks suspiciously at those who begin to look deeper. There are people who are extremely perceptive in the midst of this process. They can observe how they change. They can feel that something is ending even though they have no idea what is about to begin. Your ability to observe yourself without judgment is a sign that your transformation is healthy. The key point is not that you have to run to change your whole life. It's about changing the way you understand what happens to you. Understanding that when you start to lose interest in everything, it doesn't mean that you have gone astray. It means that you have walked long enough within that old way of life. When you stop treating it as a deviation that you must immediately correct, only then do you gain the peace necessary to look within yourself. Because what happens deep down beneath that apathy is a fascinating mechanism. Your life energy is slowly disconnecting from the identity you have built, withdrawing from places that no longer nourish you. And the way this quiet detachment is achieved is something that, if you can understand it, will forever change your relationship with yourself. What we are talking about is not a whimsical detachment of your mind or a sign of weakness. What really happens beneath the surface of your skin is a brutal and deep movement of your inner strength. For deeper psychology, this loss of connection is the ultimate proof that your life energy, that spark that makes you engage, be passionate, and feel that life has weight, is withdrawing from the old image you had of yourself. And it does so even when nothing has yet fallen apart in the outside world. Your inner energy is what makes you say, "This is my life." When you are heading towards some work, that work seems to you the most important thing in the world. When you flow towards a family or social role, you live completely immersed in that role. When a certain image of yourself energizes you, you realize that you are exactly that and nothing more. But here lies one essential detail which almost no one understands. That energy is not indebted to any loyalty towards the figure you have built to survive in society. There is no obligation to further feed routines, relationships, or ambitions that have already completed their cycle. Your inner strength is loyal solely to your wholeness, to your complete being. That is why, when the outfit you put on no longer reflects your deepest needs, that vitality begins to withdraw. And it does not warn you with a scream, does not trigger alarms, does not have to manifest through tragedy. It does it through relentless cooling. Now you do the same things as always, but you no longer feel that they are charging you. Even though you are physically present in the same places as always, your mind and your spirit have long since departed from there. And your ego, that part of you accustomed to absolute control, feeding on goals, recognition, and applause, falls into a state of terror. By stopping to receive this emotional fuel, your ego interprets silence as a deficit, as a disease that weakens you. But you don't lose energy. It just changes direction. Imagine for a moment a huge, very old tree in the middle of the garden. For many seasons, the sap flowed towards the great branches that bore abundant fruit. But there comes a moment in the life of this tree when, if the sap continues to flow to the same old branches, the whole tree will die of exhaustion. Nature is wise, and it understands that it needs to be pruned. The sap must withdraw from the old branches to nourish new buds that are born elsewhere. For someone who walks quickly and looks from the outside, the process of drying branches looks like pure destruction. But for those who understand the rhythm of life, this is the only possible condition for further growth. It is that your life energy is withdrawing from your former interests. It works exactly the same way. It doesn't do it to empty you, but to force you to stop wasting your strength on structures that no longer have any real purpose in your existence. Very often, what we suppress or ignore within ourselves finally appears in our lives as an event that stops us in our tracks. And for most people, this event is precisely that overwhelming feeling that nothing matters to them anymore. The most delicate point of this whole matter is that this withdrawal of energy is not something you choose consciously. You don't wake up one Tuesday and decide that you'll lose interest. It happens below your will, before you even manage to understand it. And because you don't control it, fear arises. You feel panic that you are losing something valuable. You believe that if you stop clinging tightly to what has defined you so far, you will disappear. Your mind is therefore resisting with all its might. It's trying to force you to make everything return to the previous state. You're forcing yourself to be interested. You force yourself to seek motivation in movies, in books, in speeches, trying to artificially resurrect the fire that has already gone out. Think of someone who has built a steel armor for decades. Someone who has convinced himself that his only value in the world lies in being strong, in the fact that he never doubts, always has the right answer, and solves other people's problems. One day, for no apparent reason, this person no longer feels like talking, doesn't want to direct anything anymore, doesn't want to save anyone anymore. Not because she failed, but because under this armor lies a part of herself, much more sensitive, a part that does not know all the answers, that is suffocating and needs breath. Energy stopped flowing towards the hero's form to force him to take off the costume. What makes this stage hell is not the loss of interest itself. What hurts you to the point of exhaustion is resistance. When you force yourself to continue desiring what no longer nourishes you, you are pulling your life force by the hair towards the dried-up well. You live against your own natural process. And the price you pay for this stubbornness is chronic exhaustion, the boredom that weighs on your bones, and an increasingly clear sense that your life has no meaning. Having reached this point, the only real way out is not to rush off in search of a new goal to distract yourself. It is not forcing oneself to back down. There is great courage in remaining still in the midst of this withdrawal of energy. It's about noticing, without judging yourself, which roles used to give you life, and today are silent. These are the things that you still maintain only out of habit, inertia, or fear of what others will say, but which no longer touch your soul. You don't have to explain this to anyone, and you don't have to solve it today. You just need to be brutally honest with yourself, and accept that you no longer feel that connection. For it is at the moment when you stop fighting the emptiness, when you finally let go of that old social mask that was suffocating you, you cross an invisible line. There is no turning back, and it is precisely then that you immerse yourself in the most lonely, dark, and transformative territory that a human can experience. A state in which all your old definitions crumble completely, preparing you for the hardest trial of your mind. This trial, which I speak of, has an old and very heavy name, the dark night of the soul. When that life energy, which we talked about, ultimately leaves the form you have imagined, you enter completely unknown territory of experience. It's no longer just about the fact that your routines or old goals bore you. The disconnection runs so deep that you start to feel like a complete stranger in your own life. Everything seems foreign to you, the walls of your house, conversations with friends, the reflection that the mirror returns to you every morning. And it happens because what is falling apart before your eyes is your own social mask. For years, to survive, to fit in with the environment, and to feel safe, you built a face that you showed to the world. Your manners, the way of speaking, things in which you yielded so that others would accept you and not exclude you. This mask is not bad. It is indeed an extremely necessary tool. If you didn't have it, interacting with other people in society would be impossible. A serious problem arises when you use this tool for so long and so continuously that you forget you are wearing it and find that your entire identity is contained within it. When this mask loses its power, when the applause of others stops filling you, and your previous roles become cardboard, the fall into the void is absolutely inevitable. Imagine someone who wakes up one day and realizes that all the labels that defined him have fallen to the ground. Employee of the month, unconditional friend, perfect couple, exemplary son. He still has those ties, but the mental frameworks that gave meaning to all of this disappeared without a trace. Suddenly he realizes that throughout his existence he played for an audience that, in fact, did not care about him at all. This is precisely the disintegration of your character. And when that floor cracks, you enter complete darkness. Not because the world has become bad, but because the things that used to give you a sense of security no longer have any power to support you. The dark night of the soul almost never comes with a scream or with dramatic scenes. It comes with a terrifying silence. The first thing that fades is not your joy, but your brightness. You stand in a kind of huge waiting room where old answers are no longer of any use to you, but new ones have not yet taken shape. Your habits from your entire life lose their meaning. And your brain, seeing that the network of habits that kept you afloat is falling apart, enters a state of brutal instability. You feel confused, floating in the void. It's like you suddenly moved to another city. Nothing bad happened. No one is chasing you, but the streets are not yours. You don't know how to move, how to introduce yourself, or where you fit in, and it is right here that your survival instinct plays the worst trick on you of all. Feeling directionless, desperation pushes you to build a new mask as quickly as possible. You want to grasp a new job, a new relationship, a new philosophy of life that will restore to you that false sense of stability. You want to be able to say with conviction again, I am this. But if you rush to fill this void out of pure fear of uncertainty, the dark night does not end. It simply changes shape. You simply change your disguise to avoid facing what you really need to see. The biggest secret of this stage is not how long you endure suffering, but how much ability you have to remain still in this empty space without trying to decorate it. When you finally stop forcing yourself to play games that no longer interest you. When you stop pretending that things hurt you, that you are actually indifferent to. Something amazing is starting to happen in your mind. A completely clear space opens up. A space where what is false falls under its own weight without any effort on your part. And it is in this absolute silence that true transformation begins to take place. This quiet process Jung called individuation, and it is fascinating. It is fascinating that it does not start with an explosion of motivation or a crazy desire to conquer the world. It starts exactly from that withdrawal you were escaping from. It begins at that precise moment when you stop feeling the need to participate in everything, to comment on everything, proving to anyone how much you are worth. Not because you have become a cold, evil, or resentful person, but because for the first time in your life another center inside you takes command. Becoming who you really are has nothing to do with adding titles, buying experiences, or adding new traits to your personality. It is a process of pure subtraction. It is the removal layer by layer of everything that is a lie in your life. The loss of interest that brought you here was the first major signal that this massive cleaning had already begun. When the artificial and blinding light of your former ambitions and concern for what others will say finally fades, your eyes need time to adjust to the twilight. At first you see nothing, but slowly you begin to perceive the true shades of your existence, the parts of yourself that you hid in the shadows because they didn't fit the picture that the world demanded of you. Many people believe that undertaking this inner journey will distance you from society and turn you into an isolated hermit. It is exactly the opposite. Crossing through this is the only true way to return to the world, but this time in an authentic manner. No longer having to strain to meet others' expectations, you no longer live defensively. You don't have to pretend to be confident when you doubt. You don't have to smile if you don't feel it. Your presence becomes significantly quieter. Perhaps you are doing fewer things than before, but that's not much. What you do has a brutal weight. You no longer choose out of a desperate need to fit in, but from a deep inner coherence. This rebirth is not an explosion of lights. It is an internal regrouping that is just beginning to reveal its true shape. You stop needing life to constantly bombard you with noise and adrenaline just so you can feel that you exist at all. You begin to feel your presence in the world from a place much deeper, calmer, but infinitely more enduring. If you have reached this point and look back, you will notice that the day you stopped clinging to everything as you used to was exactly the same day in which you started to live from the inside out, and not from the outside to the inside. That lack of interest has never been your enemy. It was the entrance to your own truth. It was a ruthless tool in which your mind used to save you from further living in pure inertia, in a shell that has long ceased to be yours, in a role that someone else wrote for you before you had a chance to ask whether you even want to play it. Not everything that disappears from your life is a tragedy. Many things fall apart simply to stop bothering you. When superficial desires evaporate, this does not mean that your story has lost its meaning. It means that you will finally stop being a supporting actor in someone else's script, that finally there will be space for something that truly belongs to you. Not because someone admitted it to you, not because you earned it according to someone else's criteria, but because it emerged from the silence that you have drowned out your whole life. Jung understood this better than anyone else in his time. He knew that a man who had never experienced this emptiness had never truly met himself, that one can live a whole life in full swing, surrounded by people, filled with duties and successes, and yet not know who one is when all of this is taken away. That's why he believed that the midlife crisis, that moment when suddenly nothing tastes as it did before, is not a disease to be cured, but an invitation to transformation that cannot be replaced by any substitute. The next time you feel that nothing from what once kept you awake at night matters to you anymore, don't panic. And don't immediately throw yourself into searching for something to fill that void with a temporary shine. Stay in this place. Breathe in this emptiness. Ask yourself with all the harshness you can muster, if you no longer have to pretend that you are who you were, who is it who is waiting in silence and has not yet had time to be born? This question is not the end. This is precisely the beginning.